pattern that God gave Moses and the construction of the tabernacle. It's triune in construction to reveal again that God is triune. Now, this is not a religious, denominational kind of teaching. This is a scriptural concept that is brought out and is almost genuinely, completely received by all denominations of Christianity, and that is God is a triune God. In other words, God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that lesson is brought out in the threes of nature, creation of man, Noah's Ark, and the tabernacle, and a multitude of other physical and spiritual applications that we have spoken of in times past. But we speak of the tabernacle today, and so we speak of it as being constructed mainly and primarily of three. The outer court, which consists of the altar, the fire altar, the sacrificial fire altar, and then the laver, and then the outer wall or court. That is that first part that I'm wondering why I'm slowing down a little is because I'm wondering if I want to go off into this other stuff, because if I do, we may not get done. But I think it's worth just mentioning in passing and briefly that this outer court with this altar and with this brazen laver is a type of the dispensation of the Father. Okay? So we have the Father and His dispensation representative most and most clearly in the outer court, one part or compartment of the three. So if you're following me, then the triuneness of the typology that God is three and the tabernacle is built as a lesson in God's construction. That's not a good word, but it's the best one I got. And man's creation or construction. We see it clearly typed here. And if we were to draw the typology out, we could actually see that this outer court is best representative of the Father's dispensation. All right? Enough said about that for the moment. Man is triune and being saved from a triad of things. The redemption, the salvation plan of God is about our souls. And these triad of things that we're being redeemed from, saved from, is the world, the flesh, and Satan. The world, the flesh, and Satan. Could you see that? Could you believe that? Yep. That which we are being saved from is also a triad? It's a triad of three: the world, Satan, and our own flesh. The tabernacle faced the east. This entry and this entry both faced the east. And we've always understood, or we should have always understood from years ago, that facing the east is always representative of coming from the west to the east. You're always of a repentive, contrite, seeking God nature if you're coming from the west to the east. Why? Because that's the way that the tabernacle is constructed, facing the east. And why is that? Well, if you'll recall, that the Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden. And they went to the east. So if you're coming from the east, or facing the east, coming to the west, I should have said. If you're coming to the west, then your back is against that you had fallen to, and you're coming in unto the Lord. Are you with me? So this is faced for those that want to return from the west to back to the east. First, we encounter the fire altar. The sacrifices that are offered on the altar can be classified as first atoning sacrifices. The sacrifices can be classified in three: atoning sacrifices, whole burnt offerings, and peace offerings. And they represent as atoning sacrifices first, an offering, an innocent animal and its blood being offered on that altar as atoning for one's sin. Second, the whole burnt offerings that are being offered up are representing consecration, wholeness of consecration, entirety, completeness, completely consecrated unto God. And then thirdly, peace offering, representing not only wholeheartedness that was representative in the whole burnt offering, but the wholehearted service that's represented in fellowship in the peace offerings. Am I boring you? No. Are you following me? Yes. I'm just giving you just little tidbits without a lot of depth, but some of you will have a lot of depth in understanding how that all of the offerings, 5 major categories of offerings, all of them depict the Messiah, Yeshua, in one of His characteristics or attributes, and offering atonement prices. One of those things are in each of those sacrifices, in each one of those offerings, but we're not speaking of them specifically. We're speaking of those offerings that are representative of the 3 major reasons for offerings: the atonement, wholehearted sacrifice, and then wholehearted service. Are you with me? Okay. Next, as we continue east, we encounter the laver. After the altar, the fire altar, the sacrificial fire altar, we encounter the laver. The laver was what? It was a brass and it was full of water. Here the priest washed in preparation for the finer sacrifices. The finer of the inner court. The outer court consisting of the wall, the altar, and the brass laver. The outer court represents the dispensation of the Father. That dispensation that is represented in the bloody sacrifices of the law. That started when? The bloody sacrifices of the law, the commandments. Where? Adam and Eve. It started in the garden, didn't it? It started from the very first fall. Original fall. It started.